James II, the tragic tale of England's last Catholic king. Picture this: a prince born into a kingdom at war, raised amid whispers of scandal, betrayal, and political strife. How does a man groomed to serve his brother, King Charles II, end up wearing the crown himself, only to lose it all in a storm of rebellion and religious turmoil? What drove James, Duke of York, to defy Parliament and risk his kingdom for his faith? Why did a former war hero and a man known for his charm and daring become one of England's most controversial kings? And what role did his scandalous marriages, fiery mistresses, and rebellious children play in his undoing? Was James II a tragic victim of circumstance or an architect of his own downfall? From a scandalous treaty with the French to a rebellion led by his own illegitimate nephew, this is a story of ambition, intrigue, and a king who gambled everything and lost. Stay tuned as we unravel the epic saga of James II, the king who couldn't keep his throne. You'll discover how love, faith, betrayal, and rebellion shaped one of the most dramatic reigns in British history. James II, King of England, Scotland, and Ireland, reigned for just 3 years, from 1685 to 1688. Few kings have lived lives as turbulent as James II, whose reign was both a testament to his resilience and a cautionary tale of ambition meeting the immovable forces of change. His story is a rich tapestry of privilege, betrayal, religious fervor, and miscalculation. To truly understand why James's reign was so brief, we must journey back to his tumultuous beginnings. Before we dive in, remember to follow us, subscribe, and click that notification button, your gateway to untangling the fascinating knots of history. Born on October 14, 1633, at St. James's Palace, James Stuart was the second surviving son of King Charles I and Queen Henrietta Maria of France. Unlike his elder brother Charles, the future king, James was often overlooked in his formative years, shadowed by his elder sibling's destiny. His childhood, though filled with splendor, unfolded under a growing cloud of political unrest. Charles I, James's father, was steering the kingdoms of England, Scotland, and Ireland into dangerous waters. His refusal to convene Parliament, a political body essential for representing the grievances of the people, marked him as an increasingly autocratic figure. He sought to impose a state-centered moderate Protestantism, an attempt to unify religious practices across his domains. This moderate Protestantism included elements of ritual and hierarchy closer to Catholic traditions than many were comfortable with, angering staunch Protestants and Puritans who viewed it as a betrayal of the Reformation. His policies alienated the Puritans in England, the Covenanters in Scotland, and the Catholic nobility in Ireland. The Irish Catholic uprising of 1641 erupted as a desperate attempt to resist Protestant impositions, leading to a civil war that engulfed all 3 kingdoms. As England descended into civil war in 1642, James, a boy of just 9, found his world collapsing. Charles I's insistence on his divine right to rule drove him to conflict with Parliament. By 1646, the parliamentarian forces had the upper hand, and James, along with his elder brother Charles, witnessed their father's arrest. The young prince was captured by parliamentarians and placed under tight control at St. James's Palace. In captivity, James developed a cunning streak. As the war raged on, he plotted his escape, and in April 1648, the opportunity came. With the help of loyalists, including Colonel Bamfield, young James donned a girl's dress, complete with a wig and bonnet. As the story goes, he carried a handkerchief and curtsied at the guards, who were either too baffled or too amused to suspect the truth. Under the cover of night, the disguised prince slipped past his captors and made his way to the safety of royalist supporters. James's escape came just in time, for the war's tide had turned decisively against his father. In 1649, the unthinkable happened. Charles I was executed by Parliament. The news reached James in France, where he had taken refuge alongside his mother, Queen Henrietta Maria. The young prince was devastated. As he stood at his father's grave, he reportedly muttered, "If kings are made by God, how can men dare to unmake them?" France became James's new home, but even there, life was fraught with peril. The country was gripped by the Fronde, a series of uprisings against royal authority. Amid the chaos, James learned firsthand how fragile monarchies could be when faced with popular discontent. While his elder brother Charles II navigated Europe's courts to build alliances, James sought solace and purpose in the military. By 1656, James had joined the French army under Louis XIV, serving with distinction during the campaigns of the Franco-Spanish War. In 1658, at the Battle of the Dunes, James commanded a division against the Spanish forces. The battle was a brutal affair fought along the sandy beaches near Dunkirk. James's troops helped secure a decisive French victory, showcasing his courage and strategic acumen. Yet his loyalty to the Catholic faith stood in stark contrast to the Protestant zeal dominating England's politics. James's commitment to Catholicism deepened during his years in exile. He was a frequent visitor to monasteries, often praying for hours and confessing his fears and hopes to clergy. "Faith is the fortress of a king," he once remarked, a sentiment that would later shape and shatter his reign. In early 1660, political negotiations buzzed across Europe. Royalist sympathizers in England and Scotland, from Edward Hyde, soon to be Earl of Clarendon, to Scottish peers like the Duke of Lauderdale, worked tirelessly to secure the return of Charles II. A declaration from Charles promising amnesty and religious tolerance softened opposition. When Charles and his entourage, including James, left the Dutch city of Breda in May 1660, they carried the hopes of a royalist resurgence. Landing at Dover on May 25th and entering London in triumph 4 days later, the restoration had begun. Cheers rang out, and James rode alongside his elder brother, soaking in the adulation of a populace desperate for peace. Love, or at least passion, wasn't far behind. James, ever the romantic and scandal magnate, had fallen for Anne Hyde, the intelligent daughter of Edward Hyde, Charles II's chief minister. Their romance blossomed secretly, as James wooed Anne with the promise of marriage, a promise sealed in haste when Anne revealed she was pregnant. By September 1660, just a few months after the Restoration, James and Anne wed quietly. Why the secrecy? For one, James hadn't sought Charles's approval, a brazen move given Anne's non-royal status. Secondly, Anne was already visibly pregnant, and James sought to avoid the appearance of impropriety, though the timing left little room for doubt. The Hydes were rising fast. Edward Hyde, now Earl of Clarendon, wielded enormous influence, leading to accusations of undue favoritism. Anne, meanwhile, faced immense scrutiny, especially as her father's political star ascended. In October 1660, their first child, Charles, was born, destined to inherit the throne if James succeeded his brother. Tragically, Charles succumbed to smallpox 6 months later. 7 more children followed. Only 2, Mary, future Mary II, and Anne, future Queen Anne, survived to adulthood. James and Anne's marriage was marked by love, but also by devastating loss. Of their 8 children, Charles Stuart, 1660 to 1661, died of smallpox at 6 months. Mary Stuart, 1662 to 1694, future Mary II, Queen of England, Scotland, and Ireland. James Stuart, 1663 to 1667, died of smallpox at age 3. Anne Stuart, 1665 to 1714, future Queen Anne of Great Britain. Charles Stuart, 1666 to 1667, died shortly after birth. Edgar Stuart, 1667 to 1671, died of natural causes at age 3. Henrietta Stuart, 1669 to 1669, died in infancy. Catherine Stuart, 1671 to 1671, died shortly after birth. Anne Hyde herself succumbed to cancer in 1671, leaving James devastated. Her death marked the end of a turbulent chapter in James's life, but paved the way for further controversy. James, Duke of York, second in line to the English throne, stands at a personal and political crossroads. Raised Anglican, James's faith had always carried a whisper of Rome. His mother, Queen Henrietta Maria, was a staunch Catholic, and his formative years in Catholic France and the Spanish Netherlands left him attuned to its rituals and doctrines. The conversion simmered slowly but inevitably, much like a kettle about to boil. By the late 1660s, his first wife, Anne Hyde, daughter of Edward Hyde, Earl of Clarendon, had herself leaned toward Catholicism, adding pressure to the Duke's spiritual tug-of-war. But James kept his conversion private, publicly announcing Catholicism in a nation still haunted by memories of his father's perceived crypto-Catholicism, and the Civil War would have been like tossing a match into a keg of gunpowder. Yet James's religious compass would no longer stay hidden. In 1673, he refused to take the oath of supremacy, a solemn pledge of allegiance to the Protestant Church of England as demanded by the Test Act. This act, passed that year, barred Catholics from public office and became a litmus test for loyalty. James's refusal was a declaration. "I will not deny my faith to appease men," he stated defiantly. England collectively held its breath, knowing this decision was no mere footnote. It was the opening salvo in a battle that would last a lifetime. James's faith wasn't just a theological issue, it was a political earthquake. England had been Protestant since Henry VIII's break from Rome in the 1530s, and any hint of Catholic resurgence was met with suspicion, even paranoia. Anti-Catholic sentiment was practically baked into English identity by the mid-1600s, with papists vilified as conspirators and agents of the Antichrist. James, by declaring his faith, had thrown himself into the lion's den. Charles II, meanwhile, had his own religious controversies. In 1670, he secretly signed the Treaty of Dover with Louis XIV of France, agreeing to convert to Catholicism at some future date in exchange for a generous pension from the French king. While Charles never followed through, the treaty's revelation years later caused outrage. Was Charles subtly paving the way for a Catholic monarchy? Parliament, already uneasy about James, viewed this as further proof of royal collusion with Rome. James's personal life was equally scandalous. His first wife, Anne Hyde, died in 1671, reportedly after receiving Catholic last rites on her deathbed. Within 2 years, James married Mary of Modena, a young Italian princess and devout Catholic. At just 15 years old, Mary was beautiful, educated, and, most importantly, a symbol of James's commitment to Catholicism. Their union was consummated amid controversy, with many Protestants fearing this marriage would secure a Catholic dynasty. Adding to the tension, James had a colorful history of mistresses. Prominent among them was Anne Carnegie, Countess of Southesk, and Arabella Churchill, sister of the future Duke of Marlborough. These relationships were notorious and added fuel to the fire of public distrust. Yet despite his personal indiscretions, James remained deeply devoted to his faith, a paradox that baffled and enraged his critics. By the late 1670s, the situation reached a boiling point. In 1678, a deranged Anglican priest named Titus Oates concocted the Popish Plot, a supposed Catholic conspiracy to assassinate Charles II and install James as king. Though completely fabricated, the plot sent shockwaves through England. Innocent Catholics were executed, and James found himself increasingly isolated. The plot fed directly into the Exclusion crisis, 1679 to 1681, the heated political battle over whether James should be barred from the line of succession. Protestant factions in Parliament, fearing a Catholic king, pushed for the crown to bypass James entirely and instead go to his daughter, Mary, and her Protestant husband, William of Orange. William, a Dutch stadtholder with a sterling military reputation, represented everything James did not: Protestant piety, political pragmatism, and unwavering opposition to Catholic France. Born in 1650, William of Orange grew up in the shadow of his father's death and his family's staunch Protestantism. The House of Orange had long been a bulwark of Dutch resistance against Catholic Spain, and William inherited this mantle with zeal. Trained in statecraft and war, he became a formidable general, leading Dutch forces against Louis XIV. His marriage to Mary in 1677 was a strategic coup, uniting England's Protestant factions with the Netherlands. The exclusionists viewed William as a savior who could secure a Protestant future for England. But Charles II resisted, staunchly defending his brother's right to the throne. The crisis ultimately ended in a stalemate, but the seeds of division were sown. When Charles II died in 1685, James ascended the throne unopposed. His coronation was a dazzling display of royal splendor. But beneath the pomp, England seethed with unease. His first major test came just months later with the Monmouth Rebellion. James Scott, Duke of Monmouth, Charles II's illegitimate but popular Protestant son, landed in Dorset with a ragtag army of dissenters, declaring himself king. Born in Rotterdam on April 9, 1649, James Scott came into the world under a shadow of controversy. He was the illegitimate son of King Charles II and Lucy Walter, a Welsh noblewoman with a rebellious streak as sharp as her beauty. Though a royal bastard, James was groomed with an eye to greatness, especially given his father's uncertainty about producing legitimate heirs. His upbringing was a tale of both privilege and peril. The young James was briefly kidnapped by royal agents during a bout of political drama, only to escape and be spirited away to Paris. This early brush with danger imbued him with a flair for the dramatic that would define his life. In Paris, he converted to the Church of England, blending Protestant devotion with royal ambition. James matured into a dashing figure, embodying all the virtues that stirred hearts and lit passions. He was handsome, skilled in arms, and charmingly bold. His military exploits in France as a commander showed promise, though his hot-headed temperament often overshadowed his strategic acumen. By his late 20s, he was not only the toast of England's Protestant circles, but also a symbol of resistance against creeping Catholic influence under the Duke of York, his uncle, later King James II. James's popularity soared when he led King Charles II's armies against Scottish Covenanters at the Battle of Bothwell Bridge in 1679, earning him admiration as a Protestant savior. But his growing influence alarmed the court, particularly as whispers grew that he might harbor ambitions for the throne. Forced into exile in the Netherlands after being implicated in the Rye House plot to assassinate Charles and the Duke of York, Monmouth turned his exile into a platform for rebellion. In the political tinderbox of late 17th century England, Monmouth became a beacon of hope for Protestants fearing the ascendancy of popery and tyranny under the Duke of York. His dashing persona made him a rallying point for dissenters, but his cause was far from spontaneous. Behind the scenes, he cultivated alliances with Protestant nobles and merchants, gathered funds, and planned his return with a band of like-minded conspirators. When Charles II died on February 6, 1685, his Catholic brother, James II, ascended the throne unopposed. James wasted no time in flexing his authority, promoting Catholics to high office and pushing for greater royal control. This heavy-handed approach, combined with the Test Act's restrictions on non-Anglicans, inflamed Protestant fears. Seizing the moment, Monmouth launched his rebellion. On June 11, 1685, he landed in Dorset with a ragtag army of Dutch mercenaries and fervent Protestant volunteers. His declaration, an impassioned promise to restore Protestantism and liberty, spread like wildfire, drawing support from farmers, artisans, and even segments of the militia. Monmouth's charisma and the people's desperation turned the rebellion into a genuine threat. Somerset's militia defected en masse, and rumors flew that even the Duke of Albemarle might join him. His forces swelled. On the misty morning of July 6, 1685, Monmouth's forces clashed with James II's army at Sedgemoor, the last pitched battle on English soil. Monmouth's men fought valiantly, but were no match for the disciplined royal troops. Cannon fire tore through the rebel ranks, and the royal cavalry routed what remained. As the battlefield fell silent, Monmouth fled under cover of darkness, disguising himself as a peasant. But the net closed swiftly. 2 days later, he was captured in a ditch, hungry, desperate, and begging for mercy. Brought to the Tower of London, Monmouth groveled before his uncle, promising even to convert to Catholicism if his life were spared. James II, however, was unmoved. Step into history's most thrilling moments. Feel the courage, heartbreak, and ambition that shaped our world. Here on our channel, we don't just tell stories, we bring them to life, sparking curiosity, wonder, and excitement in every episode. By subscribing and turning on notifications, you're not only joining a community of history lovers, you're supporting deeper dives, bolder content, and the chance to experience history like never before. Together, let's keep these stories alive and growing. Subscribe now and be part of this incredible journey. You won't want to miss a single moment. On July 15, 1685, Monmouth was led to the scaffold on Tower Hill. Thousands gathered to witness the dramatic fall of a man who had once seemed destined for greatness. His young wife, Anne Scott, tearfully visited him that morning, pleading for courage in his final moments. The executioner Jack Ketch botched the job. His first swing missed, and it took 5 gruesome blows to sever Monmouth's head, leaving the crowd horrified and casting a dark shadow over James II's already fraught reign. Monmouth's death solidified his status as a martyr for Protestantism, a tragic hero undone by ambition and betrayal. James's boldest move came with his declarations of indulgence in 1687 and 1688. These decrees suspended laws punishing Catholics and Protestant nonconformists, offering them freedom to worship openly. On paper, this sounded like an act of tolerance, but James's true intention was clear, paving the way for a Catholic revival in England. His allies, especially in the Anglican establishment, were livid. They saw it as a betrayal, a king putting his faith above his duty to his subjects. The decrees sparked outrage in Parliament and beyond. Bishops refused to read the proclamations from their pulpits, leading to their arrest, a move that turned them into heroes of the Protestant cause. By alienating his Anglican allies, James was left isolated, his kingdom teetering on rebellion. James's troubles didn't stop at politics. In 1688, his queen, Mary of Modena, gave birth to a son, James Francis Edward Stuart, ensuring a Catholic heir to the throne. For Protestants already fearing a Catholic dynasty, this was a nightmare. But the drama didn't end with the baby's birth. Rumors of a warming pan baby conspiracy began to swirl. The story went that the baby was not Mary's, but had been smuggled into her bed in a warming pan, a clever ruse to secure a Catholic succession. Was there evidence? Of course not. But in a time of whispers and plots, facts hardly mattered. The scandal spread like wildfire, fanned by Protestant fears and political enemies. Even James's own daughters, Mary and Anne, seemed to believe the rumors, further fracturing the royal family. While James tried to hold his kingdom together, his son-in-law, William of Orange, had other plans. Married to James's Protestant daughter Mary, William saw an opportunity to save Protestant England and conveniently secure the throne for himself. In November 1688, William landed in England with a well-organized Dutch army. The English people, tired of James's heavy-handed Catholicism, welcomed him with open arms. James's forces faltered, and his allies deserted him. Even his own daughters sided with William. Talk about a family feud. On December 23, 1688, James fled Whitehall disguised as a commoner. Picture a king sneaking through the night in borrowed clothes, slipping away across the Thames. It was a far cry from royal grandeur. By the time he reached France, his throne was gone, and his reign was over. James found refuge at the court of Louis XIV in France, who supported his claims to the English throne. But James wasn't content to fade into obscurity. In 1690, he made one last bid for power, landing in Ireland to rally Catholic support. At the Battle of the Boyne, James faced off against William once more. The clash was fierce, but James's forces were no match for William's disciplined army. Defeated, James fled back to France, earning the unflattering nickname Seamus a Chaka, James the Shit, among his Irish supporters. Ouch. James spent the rest of his life in exile, plotting and praying for a return that would never come. He passed away on September 16, 1701, at the Château de Saint-Germain-en-Laye, a king without a crown. His death marked the end of a dramatic, tumultuous, and ultimately tragic chapter in British history. Did you enjoy this roller coaster of betrayal, rebellion, and royal intrigue? There's so much more to uncover. Don't miss out on our future stories. Follow us, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell to be the first to dive into the greatest tales of history. From kings to commoners, every story has its moment. Don't miss yours.